Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 3.5-year-old named Kylie and I also have an 18-month-old named Mia. So recently I put out a question on Instagram asking for your Montessori specific video requests for topics that I have not yet done in this video series, and I got a lot of responses. I actually went through all of the things that you guys said and I wrote all of them down by hand. This is the list. It is ginormous, and I actually checked off all of the topics that I kept seeing come up repeatedly, and I narrowed down to a few specific ones that I wanted to do right away, and I've already tackled some of those. But there was another little small group of several related mini topics that I thought would fit really well together, and I have put them together in today's video for you guys. So from one busy parent to another, today I'd like to chat with you a little bit about encouraging your child's care of self skills in your Montessori home. So I discovered that you guys had a lot of questions related to things like hand washing, teeth brushing, helping your child learn how to get dressed independently. And I actually already have an entire video dedicated to that last one, helping your child learn independent dressing skills, which I will link in the description box down below in case you have not seen it yet, because it does go into great depth. But in this video, I'm kind of hoping to provide you guys with a little bit of an overview, some more practical tips and advice that you can put into action right away, and hopefully that will help anybody at any point in their child's journey of learning these different types of care of self skills. All right, so one of the first questions that I kept getting repeatedly was, how do I help my child get dressed independently, or how do I help them to want to get dressed independently? And the first thing that you need to think about as the parent is setting up your child's environment to make that possible, to make your child able to have opportunities for success in learning how to get themselves dressed. Now, there isn't one hard and fast set age for when this is going to happen. If I had to put a number on it, I would say somewhere between maybe like 14 or 15 months and 18 months. That gap of time is when you might start to see some of these interests emerge. You might start to see your child attempting to put on a sock over their toes, or attempting to jab their foot into a pair of pants, or tug a shirt over their head. And they're likely not going to be successful with it, but you're going to see them trying. And for you, that is your cue that your child has developed this interest now in learning how to get themselves dressed. So what I mean by preparing your child's environment to make these independent dressing skills possible is, first off, that you have their actual clothing items and their shoes and all of those things that they need to get dressed each day. Have those things low down where your child can actually access them by themselves. So this could be a small child-sized wardrobe, but it doesn't have to be. It can also be a low clothing rod that you've mounted at the child's height in an existing closet. Or it might actually be a chest of drawers that is theirs, or maybe it's shared with other people in the family and they have access to the bottom drawer or the bottom 2 drawers, whatever they're tall enough for, and those are dedicated to them only. It could be just a series of baskets or bins on a shelf in the closet, or on some sort of a storage unit of some kind. Honestly, it really can be anything, as long as your child is able to access it independently and it's organized and they know where to find certain items of clothing that they need. A lot of parents do worry about their child pulling all of the things out of the bins or out of the wardrobe or out from the closet and putting it all over the floor. And what I have to say about that is, it happens. That's what little kids do. Obviously, if that's not your cup of tea, then maybe you want to hold off until your child's a little older. But from my experience, it's not a stage that lasts incredibly long. They eventually become used to the idea that their clothing is there and it's not as fun to pull everything out all the time. And they eventually stop doing it. And for me, having the freedom to access their clothing and being given that independence is more important than having to put clothes away on occasion. So when it does happen, the best thing you can do is just recognize, oh my goodness, you put all your clothes all over the floor again. Let's clean these up. Your clothes need to stay in the drawers. And it might feel repetitive. You might have to do it 1,000 times until they get the idea, but I promise you, eventually they do, and eventually they do stop doing that. The other part of it is offering your child choices, especially when they're much younger. Basically, as soon as your child can respond to a question that you're asking by pointing, that is a really good time to start offering your child choices in their clothing each day. And the way that this would work is to only pick out 2 choices that you are completely acceptable with them wearing. So it should be seasonally appropriate. They should match if that's something that's concerning to you, but otherwise it's not really a big deal if they mismatch. But make sure whatever they have to choose from, you are okay with. And then basically you could just sit them down and lay out the 2 choices and say, which one do you want to wear today? And they can just point to the one that they want, and that's the outfit that they get dressed in that day. It's really that simple. But if you do it from early on, they get used to this idea that they can choose what they're wearing each day. And it gives them a sense of empowerment over the choices that they have throughout their day. And it helps to build up those confidence and those independent skills. And then as far as the actual getting dressed process, there's really no one way to do it. My first biggest tip, and I think I mentioned this in that more in-depth video, was first to turn your child around. A lot of the time as parents, we have the tendency to face our child when we're getting them dressed, but that's almost opposite for them to understand how to hold the clothing and which way it goes on. Like, it doesn't make as much sense to them. So if you just turn your child around and get them dressed that way, this way they can see how to put the clothing items on from the proper perspective. It helps them learn a lot faster. And one other little trick that you can try is to introduce a little rhyme or a song that goes along with the steps of putting on some of those trickier pieces of clothing, like pants, for example. To this day, my 3.5-year-old still repeats the rhyme as she's getting dressed every single day. And my daughter Mia, we've been saying it to her for months now at this point, and she is just now starting to talk. So I'm waiting for the day that I hear her starting to repeat the rhyme, but I can already tell that she knows the steps because she's heard it so many times. I can already see her going for the motions before you've even gotten to the next step. So consistency in using that rhyme is going to help. And it can be any rhyme that you want, but if you need some inspiration, I will share with you the one that we use. And it simply is, for a pair of pants, is tag on the ground, feet in the holes, wiggle them up until you see your toes, and then stand up and pull them up over your butt or your bum, whatever you want to say. And it's short and sweet. It goes with each of the steps. We say them as the girls are putting their feet into the leg holes of the pants and things like that. And it works out perfectly, and it helps them remember. I don't have a rhyme for shirts or any other pieces of clothing to share with you, but I'm sure some of you guys who already do something like this have some ideas. So if you have a little rhyme that you want to share with us, please leave those in the comments down below, because I'm sure the rest of us would love to hear them. And the last, perhaps most important thing when it comes to helping your child learn how to get dressed independently is twofold. One, that you have to have patience, lots of it, because it is a very slow, gradual process. You're gonna have to sit on your hands at some point and just bite your tongue, not say anything, and just allow them to struggle a little bit. You can of course step in if they look like they're getting really frustrated and they're about to just, throw in the towel and give up altogether. But otherwise, you really wanna let them have that little bit of struggle and feel a little bit frustrated, so that when they finally do get it, they're like, yes, they have this feeling of success, and it motivates them to want to keep trying the next time. So you've got to have some patience, but you also have to build in extra time into your schedule to allow them to go at their own pace. This is really important if you are a working parent or your child goes to school or daycare and you have somewhere to be at a certain time in the morning. You want to make sure that maybe you're setting the clock a little bit early, getting up a little extra early and getting that whole routine of the morning started early, so that by the time it comes to the part where everybody's getting themselves dressed, your child has a little bit of extra time to go through the steps and practice it on their own. It's not just you rushing them through the process and quickly putting on their shirt and pants for them just to get out the door on time. So as much as you can, try to build that into your schedule. This way they have those really important opportunities for practice. And with all of that practice, by the time your child is like 2.5, 3 years old, there's no reason that they shouldn't be fully capable of getting themselves dressed completely independently. Now they might need your help with like tricky things, buttons, laces, zippers, anything that requires a little bit more fine motor dexterity that they might not have developed yet. And in that case, of course, help them out. There might even be some time still that they put on their their shirt backwards, or they put their shorts or pants on backwards. And there's nothing wrong with that. The point is they're successful in doing it all by themselves. And that's what's important to them. That's what makes them feel good, and it gives them that sense of confidence and empowerment. All right, so next up is hand washing. And in the motivation department, you're likely not going to run into any trouble with your toddler wanting to learn how to wash their hands, because all kids love water. It's an incredibly fun sensory experience for them. They just have this fascination with running water and playing in bubbles in water. So this is something that they're going to be excited about learning how to do. Your task as a parent is to corral that excitement and help them get over the novelty of it so that they can actually learn the proper steps for how to actually wash their hands. And the first thing that I would tell you to go back to again is preparing your child's environment to make it possible for them to be able to wash their hands independently. Now, all over Instagram, I have seen them, I'm sure you guys have seen them, all of these gorgeous pictures of these adorable little child-sized basins with a little water dispenser and a soap pump that's perfectly their size, or a little small bar of soap and a little towel. And that is all fine and dandy if you have the space for it and if you have the budget for it. You will more often see these small child-sized hand washing stations in Montessori classrooms as opposed to home environments, simply because that's where they originated. You know, Montessori's been around for over 100 years. So back in the day, that was how kids washed their hands in the classroom, was a small basin of water. And that has continued. You'll see it in a lot of Montessori classrooms even today, just to preserve the tradition of the practice. But at home, if your child is going to have access to a sink with running water, and if that's where everyone else in the family is washing their hands, remember, modeling is key. If that's what they see you doing, they're most likely going to want to learn how to do what it is they see you doing. So it would make more sense, I would say, unless you really want the child-sized hand washing station, it makes more sense in most cases and for most budgets to figure out a way to make your existing setup at home accessible to your child so that they can use the same sink that everyone else is using. So what that entails basically is figuring out how to get your child up to counter height. And there are fortunately a lot of solutions to that now. There are all kinds of stools that you can find online or even in stores that you can purchase that will help get your child up to the proper height so that they can actually reach the sink. Generally speaking, you want to look for a stool that has 2 levels as opposed to just 1, because they do tend to be really small in the beginning when they're first learning how to do this, and so they need that extra little boost in height. The one word of caution that I would offer about the double height step stool, especially with younger toddlers who are first learning how to use one, is to make sure that you're just supervising. You know, toddlers are not exactly the most stable when they're this little. They tend to take missteps off the edge, or they'll lose their balance kind of randomly and unexpectedly. So you want to be on standby just to make sure that you can catch them if something like that were to happen. And I will be honest, it has happened a handful of times to me, and I was always glad that I was right there. It doesn't happen very often though. And so you just want to be on standby just in case. That aside, you do want to allow them to practice going up and down the stool and kind of keeping your hands off of them as much as possible. This way they learn how to use the stool and how to get on and off of it by themselves. You want that process to be as independent for them as you can make it. And then as far as the actual hand washing process, it's just a matter of first demonstrating for your child exactly what the steps are, very slowly and carefully, very precisely, so that they can see what it is that you're doing and without a whole lot of talking going on. This way they can really focus on what it is that you're doing with your hands as you're washing them off. And then from there, it's just allowing them opportunities to practice. They will have seen it enough that they know what the steps are. Sometimes they might get the steps mixed up as they're first learning, but eventually they'll have that sequence down, and then it's just a matter of the manual dexterity and being able to turn the faucets on and off independently by themselves and understanding which side is cold and which side is hot as they get a little bit older. And of course, you're supervising until they do understand that. and then just practicing, you know, how to work the soap pump bottle, or how to lather the bar of soap between their hands to get everything all bubbly, and then how to wash the soap off of their hands. These are all little tiny steps that they have to master one at a time. And once they become accustomed to it, then it's a seamless process that they understand, and they do it as second nature, just as you and I would. Your best approach, as in all other things in a Montessori environment, is to give them the opportunity to be independent. Let them initiate the process by themselves. And if you see a point at which you need to step in and offer a tiny little bit of help, just a little bit, and then step back again to allow them to continue, then that's all you need to do. Usually this is more than enough to keep them going and for them to be successful. And then as far as your role is concerned, otherwise, just don't expect perfection. You know, sometimes they're gonna have a little bit of soap left on their hands by the time they're done, and that's okay. You also wanna make sure that you're not punishing them or scolding them in any way for getting water outside of the sink and maybe making a little bit of a mess. Of course, you're not allowing them to just sit there and splash all over the place and make a huge mess as if it's playtime, because the purpose is to be washing their hands. But if they are making a little bit of a mess because they're not very coordinated yet, that's not something that's fair to scold them or punish them for. It's part of the learning process. So the best thing that you can do is just have a little towel on standby, you know, expect the mess to happen, have the towel ready, and then when the water droplets or splashes or whatever it is happen on the counter or outside of the sink area, then you can just kind of non-judgmentally and calmly point it out to them. Draw their attention. Be like, oh, look, you got some water right over here. Let's make sure we wipe that up. We don't want any water on the counter. And then you can actually have them take the towel with you and teach them how to wipe it up. And very quickly you will notice that they're going to see, oh no, like when they make a mess, and they're gonna reach for the towel before you even have a chance to say anything, and they're gonna get going and wiping it up all by themselves. Try to make it as enjoyable for them as you can and help them to feel that success in doing it independently. There are also some hand washing songs that can go along with this, just like the getting dressed songs and rhymes that I mentioned earlier. I personally don't know of any because I don't use one with my children, but you certainly can if you feel like that would be helpful. And I will see if I can try to find, I'm sure there are some online. I will try to find some hand washing songs or rhymes that you can use, and I will link them down below for you. And the last group of questions that I received were all related to teeth brushing, especially for toddlers, because I'm sure many of you out there have had experience with that struggle. A lot of kids do not like to have their teeth brushed, and I think the key is in that phrasing. Having their teeth brushed, AKA for them. So that's what's great about a Montessori environment, is that you're empowering them to learn how to do it by themselves, and suddenly it opens up this whole new world of possibilities, and they feel more excited about it and they actually want to do it. So let's back up a little bit first and look at the environment again. So making it possible for your child to be able to brush their teeth independently. If this is something that they do at the sink, which I think most people probably do unless they're doing it in the bath, I guess, making sure that you have that stool set up so that they can get up to the sink, and having their teeth brushing supplies at hand. Close, within reach, whether that's on the counter or in a nearby drawer that they can reach, whatever your setup might be, having it handy for them to reach without having to need your assistance to get it. But the process is basically the same as hand washing, in the sense that you're trying to give them as much ownership over the process as possible. You want them to be able to do all of the steps as much as they can by themselves as soon as they're showing the interest and the readiness to do so. I like to make sure that I'm offering the opportunity for her to initiate the process by herself, thinking about it on her own. So I will wait for her to grab her toothbrush by herself, but if I notice that she's kind of going for something else, like the soap, or she's not understanding that it's teeth brushing time, I will often give her a little verbal cue, like, hey, don't forget your toothbrush, and then that's usually enough to kickstart the process, and she'll grab her toothbrush and her toothpaste. At 18 months, she does still need help with actually getting the toothpaste onto the toothbrush. That's totally normal. They're gonna need help with that for a very long time to come still, like all the way up into the preschool years for a lot of kids. So you'll put the toothpaste on the toothbrush for them, but then you give it right back to them and let them continue from there all on their own. So the key here is that they are starting the process by themselves. You are giving them their turn first to brush their teeth. And obviously they are not going to do a very good job with it. That is to be expected. expected. The point is they're practicing with those motions and they're getting used to this process of brushing their teeth independently. Now, because we don't want them to get cavities, then you need to help them learn that after their turn comes your turn. And so often I will say, is it mama's turn yet? And usually when she's ready, she will offer me the toothbrush. And that's when I take over and I make sure that her teeth are brushed well so that she maintains good dental hygiene. Something else that I like to do, which makes it more fun for them, so it's something that you can try also, is to sing a little teeth brushing song while you're brushing their teeth or while they're brushing their teeth. And there are lots of teeth brushing songs out there. I'm sure you can just Google it and find 1,000 of them, but I will go ahead and share with you what ours is. It is to the tune of Frere Jacques, and it's just something that I made up a long time ago, and this is what it sounds like. Brush my teeth, brush them well, rinse my mouth with water, spit it out, spit it out. Please excuse my singing, I am not a singer, but that is the song. And my girls know it by heart, at least my older one does, and the younger one gets excited. You can see she actually starts dancing when I start singing the song. She loves it, and it's just something to help motivate them and engage them. The other part of singing a song with the teeth brushing thing is I think that it helps your child have a definitive amount of time that they know you're going to be brushing their teeth. Whereas for some kids, if they don't know when you're gonna stop, it just kind of feels like it's going on forever, and maybe that's what makes them a little bit more antsy and resistant to having their teeth brushed once it is your turn. So having that song that maybe you sing 2 or 3 times, depending on how long the song is, having that routine as part of the teeth brushing process might be something that provides them with a little bit of a sense of stability, and they kind of know what to expect. So it helps them to settle down a little bit about it. Just like with hand washing, you want to make it as enjoyable as possible. So when you are actually taking your turn brushing their teeth, you don't need to get super uptight about getting it all done in one go, which I think is what we tend to do as adults because that's what we do when we brush our own teeth. It's okay to brush their teeth in little spurts. So if they're opening their mouth kind of intermittently for you, you can get in there and get a little brush and then maybe stop for a second as they, do something else. And then the next opportunity you have, you can get in there and get another little brush on the other side, and just do what you can. Work with what you can with your child in that moment, and try not to stress out about it too much, because as soon as you start stressing out about it, that's when your child is going to start resisting. So just try to go with the flow, try to keep things light and fun and positive, and you're going to find that it's a lot smoother. I know this for sure because my first daughter, no problems brushing her teeth. It was the easiest thing in the world from the time that she's a baby, and she's still very cooperative to this day. Mia, my toddler, on the other hand, has never liked having her teeth brushed. She has been resistant from day one, and I have found that now that she's, again, 18 months old, she's getting a little bit older, and she's understanding the process, and she's able to do it by herself. Now she has kind of become more accepting of the process, and she actually seems to enjoy it for the most part. But up until this point, it was most definitely kind of doing it in spurts here and there and trying to find ways to make it fun for her. So I totally get it if your kid is like that. It's something that they will eventually grow out of. You just have to do what you can for the time being. And on the flip side of that, if you have a child who doesn't mind having their teeth brushed, but it's still difficult for you to do when it's your turn because they like to be silly, I know firsthand what that's like, because Mia, now that she enjoys it, likes to bite the toothbrush and do all kinds of silly things while it's my turn. If you have a child that does those things, your best response is no response. So for example, while I'm brushing her molars or sometimes even her front teeth, she'll bite the toothbrush, and instead of me like stopping and getting really negative about it and being like, stop doing that, I will just pause. I'll just stop brushing and leave her there biting the toothbrush for a minute, and she'll lock eyes with me and be kind of waiting to see what I'm gonna do. And then literally within a couple of seconds, she'll open her mouth back up, and then I just continue going again. So it's not a situation that calls for sternness or getting mean or very insistent about it. Even if you are becoming frustrated, you just kind of have to rein that in. Those are your feelings, and just learn to keep things light and positive. I can't say that enough, because that's what's going to help your child become comfortable with the process. And one last thing related to teeth brushing that has nothing to do with Montessori, but I know you guys saw it in my my video clips, and someone is bound to ask, so I'm just gonna go ahead and answer it now, is the whole debate of type of toothbrush and type of toothpaste at different ages. And as far as the toothpaste goes, I know that there are some dentists who will tell you to use fluoride toothpaste from the get-go. Just use a very tiny little small, like rice grain sized amount, and you can certainly do that if you want to. However, we opted to go with the fluoride-free toothpaste when they were younger, and then once my older daughter learned how to spit, like regularly could spit and would never swallow the toothpaste, then I switched over to the fluoride toothpaste because I didn't want her to swallow any of it and have it upset her tummy. So once the spitting was consistent, then we switched to the fluoride. But again, entirely up to you. I know there are even some families who don't use fluoride toothpaste at all, and that's totally cool too. So again, it's a very like personal decision, but that's what we did in our family, and I figured I would share that with you in case you were interested in hearing someone's perspective on it. And as far as the type of toothbrush is concerned, I would recommend using a manual brush in the very beginning, especially for much younger toddlers who are first getting started, because the electric toothbrush might be a little bit more overwhelming or even scary to a really young child. Both of my girls actually still prefer the manual toothbrush. However, my older daughter was gifted an electric toothbrush by her grandmother back when she was 18 months old, and I did wait a little while to introduce it to her because she was a little bit more fearful of things like that. But once I introduced it to her, she was totally fine. I would say that she was probably about 2 the first time she used the electric toothbrush. And so to this day, she kind of just goes back and forth. Sometimes she'll use the electric, sometimes she'll use her manual toothbrush, and I don't really have a preference either way. I would prefer that she use the electric because I feel like it gets her teeth more clean, but she likes to go back and forth, and that's totally fine with me. My currently 18-month-old Mia has experimented with her sister's toothbrush. She's yanked it off the counter a couple of times and shoved it in her mouth, and one time I turned it on for her just so that she could see, and she doesn't really seem to be bothered by it at all, so I could probably use one with her, but I have for the time being stuck with the manual toothbrush because she's really starting to get the hang of those teeth brushing motions, and I want her to continue learning how to do that before we transition over to the electric brush. But again, with all that said, those are just my personal experiences, and every child is different and unique, and you just kind of have to feel it out and go with the flow and do what works for them. All right, so those are all of my tips related to those all-important self-care skills. If you are interested in learning more about how to implement Montessori at home with your children, I offer an e-course that walks you through it step by step. So I will leave a link in the description box down below if you're interested in learning more about that. And just in case you are new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching more of, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.